Alrighty, thank you for making this happen, joining us, being together for the highest purpose and the best reasons. So the challenges may be great, but your job is to not call your challenges failures just because they aren't met yet, just because the spiritual path is a long and winding road. It's easy for the mind to trick us and say, oh look, I failed because you didn't meet the mark you were trying to meet, or I'm not where I want to be yet. It's easy to feel and believe and think it's valid that that represents failure. You'll be able to declare, if you must, you can declare it a failure 1 second before your last breath. That's the only time you'll have a valid situation where that can be applied and nobody can stop you or tell you you shouldn't. Even then, it's not wise, but because it's not like you're it's not like you're not going to be there after you die. But if during life you're continually telling yourself, I failed here and I failed there, even though you feel it deeply, it's still a mistake to label it that way and let your mind trick you into calling it that, even just to yourself. Because there's no way it can be true. If you haven't succeeded yet, that's not failure. And if the challenge is immense, that's not failure. And if the entire deck is stacked seriously against you, that's not failure. Failure is you refuse to try, and you were offered help and you refuse to take it. That's failure. You refused to give yourself a chance, and you refused to let others help you move forward or give you a helping hand. That I would not argue with you if you wanted to say I failed, if that's the real situation. But that is so rare. Very few people are ever in that situation. And if they are, it's usually for very understandable reasons. They're too mentally ill, they're too compromised in some way. The way that cards are stacked against them, it is almost pretty much impossible. You know, if you're in prison, there are certain things you can't accomplish. To say I failed isn't really accurate if the circumstances completely don't allow. Everybody's not cut out to be Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or people who go to prison for high reasons, not because they're criminals, and turn it into something that changes hearts and minds all over the world. That's a few people in all of history. So when you tell yourself you failed, you are really exaggerating, basically. And the mind loves, the ego loves to pronounce yourself a failure, or someone else too. The ego is quick to say so-and-so is a failure if you want to prop yourself up. If you want to feel not like a failure, it's a very nice trick to say, well, see, that's a failure, he's a failure, she's a failure, that's why I'm not a failure. That simply means you feel like a failure, but you don't want to feel it. But whether you feel it or not is not the measure. The measure is, what does it mean to fail? And I'm only saying it because this is satsang. I'm only saying it because on the spiritual road of life, many times we feel that either we're failing or we did fail. We tried and we failed. It's never going to be valid, that statement. It's too harsh. It's too self-judging. It's too judgmental and self-critical too critical, because you can't say when you bake an apple pie, if it tasted okay, but not the best apple pie you ever tasted. If it tasted okay, but not great. If it tasted okay, but you wouldn't say it's bad, but you wouldn't say it's good. It's just okay. You can eat it and it's fine. You can get it down. It's not hard to swallow. You don't want to spit it out. It's okay. Many people who take cooking and baking seriously would call that a failure. That's really the best example that comes to mind automatically for what I'm talking about. When you're calling yourself or something it's important to you, when you're calling it a failure or calling yourself a failure, it's like you baked the apple pie that was okay. And everybody's going to eat it. Nobody's going to say, no, I'm not going to eat it when you serve it for dessert. But nobody's going to jump up and down and say, wow, this is fantastic. Maybe one person because they're crazy. But because everybody likes something that sucks and everybody hates something that's great. People are all over the map. But you can't go by that one. You go by how most people would react. So you're making it too serious when you say I failed. You're making it too serious. It's too serious to say the apple pie turned out terrible when it just turned out okay. Okay is good enough that it is not valid to bring in strong words like failure or it tastes bad. No, it doesn't taste bad. It just tastes okay. So you have to tell yourself the truth. I'm still trying, or I'm not done yet, or the challenge hasn't been met yet, but that doesn't translate to I failed or I'm failing. It translates to so far the pie is okay. Yeah, I'm trying to make the pie better, taste better, so you'll say, wow, this is phenomenal pie, but it's not bad pie. Unless it's bad pie, you can't call it failure. Unless it's pie and everybody starts to take a bite and they won't even put it in their mouth, they can smell already how bad it is. Only that counts as failure. And that really hasn't happened to any of you, that you failed for real. The worst that's happened is you've tried really hard, thought you could accomplish it, and it hasn't happened yet. That's the worst. That's not failure. That's so endemic to the spiritual path that has to be pointed out from time to remind you that you are not to be so critical of yourself, that you are to see yourself as an ongoing project, not a finished article, that you are always not failing when you are trying to go forward. If you are trying to stand still, in fact, I would, many might not, but I would call that failure. Purposely trying to stand still, purposely trying to not move forward, trying to plant yourself in one spot and stay there out of some need for comfort, security, or fear of the future. I would call that failure, because you may succeed. You may be able to plant yourself. And if you're stationary, I would call that failure, because then there's no chance of going forward until you're willing to stop being stationary. So there are a few things where the word failure may apply if it's not meant in a harsh way, but you can't just throw that around at yourself. You have to do better in terms of seeing what's going on, so that you're not, basically so that you're not insulting yourself. You have to respect your journey, as you could say. You're on a true and real spiritual path that requires that you respect not just the path, but the walker, which means you. You can't just be throwing insults at yourself because you feel like you're not doing well enough. Because it's guaranteed that you'll often feel like you're not doing well enough or going fast enough. So you have to be reminded again and again, don't mistakenly call that failure. Don't mistakenly judge it. Don't misevaluate it as representing anything particularly significant, because it says nothing about tomorrow. It just says that the way you're hoping for it or thinking about it hasn't been, your criteria haven't been met at this point. When they do get met, they won't be like your criteria. When they do get met, you'll revise your criteria to be in line with what getting to that point actually means. Because ahead of time, you can only be guessing, and a guess will always be inaccurate because it's an assumption. But you'll feel fine about it because it's automatic that you'll see that your criteria were not as what you thought were the criteria in advance, which can't be figured out in advance, don't apply as much as what actually happens, which is superior to what your criteria actually were. You'll see that what actually happened, where you actually got to, is better than what you thought it would be, in other words, in the general sense, general way of saying it. In other words, God's will always have a better outcome than the best of your will. What you think is good, when you get there, when it happens, what will actually happen would be better than what you were thinking. And it'll be obvious to you that, yeah, it's what I was thinking, but a way better version. And that's all the way from it accomplishes what I hope, but even more, to it has nothing to do with what I hoped. It's just way beyond that and way better than that. So you can't lose, really. You can't lose, because the worst that happens is it hasn't happened yet. And when it does, it will be better than anything you were imagining or thinking ahead of time is the meaning of it. That's one of the best things about true spiritual life and the actual spiritual path, is any new level, any new stage, any actual achievement, any actual forward movement, any actual improvement is always way superior to what you anticipated. That's one of the joys of it. And when you start having that experience again and again, no matter how difficult the challenge is, that kind of, once you know that that's how it works for real and for sure and always, it gives you a kind of a willingness to go on when it's the hardest, because you know that, at least until your last breath, whatever works out is going to work out beyond what you thought was going to be good. It's going to be gooder than that. And you just have no way of anticipating that. It's always in hindsight. It's always once it arrives, you can see it. And probably every one of you can instantly, hearing this little explanation or reminder, you could probably, without any effort, think of at least instantly think of 5 instances that would be an absolute perfect example of that from your life so far, from your spiritual life so far. And this is not how it works in real life, meaning the material life. When I say real life, I just mean it as not the spiritual life. It's a misnomer, because real spiritual life is the real life, but you know what I mean. In regular material life, it almost never works this way. In fact, it's the opposite usually. Within a short period of time, once you achieve what you were trying to get or get to, within a short period of time, you see it's not as good as you imagined it would be. You are almost invariably disappointed. You get your dream job, and it's great. And for the first month, you're flying on a cloud. But by the second month, you're starting to see the politics and how nasty it is. And you're starting to see how your boss isn't easy to work for, and how your dream job may have aspects to it that aren't so dreamy. And by the third month, you're starting to think, maybe I shouldn't have taken this job. And this is really typical. So, and I know many of you know this from your own life, and if you're under 30, you may not. If you're over 30, you probably already know it well. So, I'm just, give or take. So, it's, as a general rule, it can be said that the material life, and when you go for, and I'm not saying don't try to achieve in daily, worldly life, I'm saying success in worldly life leads generally to disappointment, and in essence leads to failure. Success in worldly life always ends in failure, and failure, what you think is failure, what we feel when we're judging ourselves is failure. In spiritual life is not failure at all, and actually when you truly succeed in spiritual life, it never disappoints. It's actually better than you were anticipating. And that doesn't get revised a year later or 2 years later. In material life, in dealing with people and things, in the earthly patterns of things and the way things happen, 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, you always look back and think of it in a whole different way. It's always hindsight. It's always revised, and usually it's to the negative. Usually it's, I thought it was so great, but it wasn't that great. Sometimes not, but generally, that's more often than not, that's the revision. And that never happens in spiritual life. You look back, and if it's revised at all, it's, wow, now I see it's probably even better than I thought when I saw how better it was. But at the very least, it doesn't change. It's never, you look back, if it was a real forward movement or improvement, or you got to a new level, or the next stage was reached, you never look back 5 years later and say, oh, I misunderstood, that actually sucked. Because you're used to that from the worldly life, you think that it can happen, or you may think it can happen in spiritual life, but if you really look at it observantly with, objective eye, it never happens. You're always still content and happy and realizing that what you saw as an advancement was an advancement, and it will never be lost. Now it helps you go forward. It doesn't get, even in your mind, revised into, I didn't see the whole picture, or I didn't see it right. And that's only in spiritual life. It doesn't work that way in regular life. It works that way with appreciation, gratitude, and seeing the wonders of human beings. With that, it works that way. But it doesn't work that way with all the events of life. When you look back 10 years later and you realize that the people you were taking for granted were actually much more important for you than you understood then or could recognize then. Or you realize some experience that was very painful was actually vital. You wouldn't be who you are and understand what you understand. It wouldn't have advanced spiritually if that experience hadn't been there, and there's no way to have the experience without the pain. So, but I'm talking about the generalities in general. Those are a few of the exceptions. The generalities are, in material life, you'll always look back and feel disappointed. In spiritual life, you'll look back and you'll never be disappointed. And that's why it's part of why spiritual life is superior. It's superior only by the fact that it's the only real life. That's enough. But there are things you can say, aspects of how it gets experienced, that also is the argument for why it's superior, and you should not put more energy than you need to into your worldly life, and put as much as you can into your spiritual life, because that's the one that pays off. The other one's a merry-go-round. When you run on a merry-go-round, you just get exhausted. You're running, and the merry-go-round is going around. The running isn't going to get you anywhere. But when you run for real on a straight line, you get somewhere. That's the difference between the worldly life and the spiritual life. The worldly life's a merry-go-round. You may be running just as hard, but when you stop running, you haven't gone anywhere. But in spiritual life, it's a straight line. And figuratively, it's a straight line. When you run, you'll end up somewhere else, and somewhere down the road that is a better position. Again, I'm going to repeat why I'm making this statement, these few little statements, because it is inevitable that moments will come when you're sincere in your spiritual endeavor, and every one of you are very sincere, almost remarkably sincere. It's unusual to have so many people at once who have this level of sincerity. There will be moments where you feel like you've utterly miserably failed. And you'll feel that, but you have to do your best to not indulge it, and certainly not fall for it, not believe when your mind or even your feeling state says that, to do your best not to believe it, which is very difficult, because you might feel it intensely, and it's hard not to believe it isn't true. It's hard to say to yourself, I feel it strongly, but it isn't true. It's very hard sometimes. We all struggle with this sooner or later, because you're guaranteed to be in that situation sooner or later. I have to keep reminding on a regular basis, so that when that day comes, as it will for sure, no matter how many times it's come before, it'll come again. You just have to get to the point where you automatically remember that. And even that is no guarantee that you won't fall in the trap and judge yourself and be unkind to yourself, but at least you know that that's not truly the truth. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about off the cuff. What do you want to say on the cuff? They say off the cuff, but do they ever say on the? What would on the cuff mean?
You have notes written on your sleeve.
Oh. Oh. Why is Elda explain good? Off the cuff, on the cuff. Okay.
Go ahead, Kat.
Thank you for taking my question. Guruji, I had a moment yesterday where I felt something very phenomenal, truthful, that I had not touched before come to me, and then it became kind of part of the distance, and I wanted to report it to you, see if you could help it come back into the clear. I was just sitting in my car, and I had this something, just a profound feeling, and I sat with it because I'm falling behind at work, and I wanted to understand maybe why. There were obvious reasons, but it didn't feel like the real reason. I'm having a serious medical condition treated, and that makes me a little slow. But that wasn't the real reason behind it, and there was something else, and so I just sat with that space to see what would come. And there was this, it came to me as a backwards play. That I'm always trying to achieve these things that are achievements to feel enough. And as soon as I have this, whatever this status is or this achievement is, then I'm enough. And that struck me as very backwards.
It's not backwards.
And it was my entire, it's not backwards.
It's not backwards, it's just, I mean, what you're saying is you saw that more clear than ever. It's 1,000% true. You've said it before in other ways. What you're saying now is it's even more clear to me than it's ever been. So that's fantastic. But yeah, you're seeing, it's too harsh to say it's backwards. That's kind of almost blaming yourself, on the cusp of blaming yourself. It's just, now you're seeing the truth more clearly, that it'll never work, no matter. This is one of the first conversations you and I ever had before you were even a disciple. of how you're always looking for validation. The word you were using then was validation. You know, you go and get a certificate that you completed this training and that training when you were already, you know, proficient at it, and you didn't need the certificate, but it's like to prove to yourself, to prove to the world. So if you're seeing more clearly that, and that's what you're saying, if you're seeing more clearly that you're running after proof that you're good enough, and you're seeing that all the proofs in the world, you'll still never feel good enough. You just have to recognize that you are good enough without doing anything. That's what you're intimating. That's where the next sentences are going to go. So that's absolutely correct. So let that play through all the way, and then find the way. This is absolutely so basic, and this is the whole issue for you. This is the central issue, that you just think you have to prove or justify that you're good enough, and it drives you crazy, and you do actually spend a lot of time and energy and even money on getting this certificate and that training and taking that class, but it's not to learn, actually. It's to validate. And the validation, what you're trying to validate is you have a right to be alive, and you already have it by being here. So you have a right to be who you are. And, you know, I don't know the exact text of it, but it's always along those kinds of lines. Maybe something more specific, but really doesn't matter. Most people express it as to be worthy enough or deserving. It's like, if you can start to see, and what you're describing is that you're actually starting to see enough for the first time. It's not like you haven't seen it, it just hasn't been clear enough. You're saying it's getting much clearer. Isn't it funny how often people report that when they're in their car, these things happen? Really? In the car or in the shower? Those are the most conducive places, apparently, for spiritual clarity to arrive, in the car and the shower. If you could take a shower in the car, you'd be instantly enlightened.
I need to move into my car then. We all do. Thank you.
Well, if you live in LA, you already have. So. Yeah, what you're saying is very simple and very true. There's no confusion whatsoever. You're not confused at all. You're exactly correct. But now you need to simply let that understanding be complete. 100% get it that, yeah, it's as simple as that. I keep running after achievements to prove I'm good enough, and it's never going to work, because the only way that I'm ever going to feel good enough is to recognize that I'm good enough, no matter what certificate I get or don't get. That it's never, the outside validation is never going to matter until you see that there's nothing to validate, or that you validate yourself. You say you say, because you know it's true, that I don't need any validation. I'm as good as anybody. I'm here, and I gotta live my life. That there's nothing here to be ashamed of.
That part is really clear, but it's playing out in a new way that's confusing. I've actually started underachieving in my job, and I've never seen myself do it before. And there's almost like something outside of myself pushing me to not turn things in on time, hit my marks, ask for help when I need it. It's not like myself. But I feel compelled to be this way. That's what I was sitting with. And it got to the point where I saw myself trying to fight with myself to hit an expectation of performance that I'm just too sick to hit right now.
Yeah. So.
And instead of pushing myself to hit it, I'm like being taken. Something is helping me not hit my goals. I'm confused about it because I'm not generally this way.
Yeah. So you're not confused about it. Stop telling yourself you're confused about it, because you're not. You just stated it very clearly. You're not your usual self. You're physically sick. You're not capable of what you'd ordinarily be capable of. So you shouldn't be trying as hard. You shouldn't be working as hard. You shouldn't be trying to do... If you have a broken leg, you don't try to walk to everywhere like you ordinarily would. It's exactly the same, which is wise. So there's no confusion. You're just not used to it. You're not used to using achievement on a daily, what you think of as achievement. It can be something small, on a daily basis as a way to tell yourself that you're okay enough. So
That's it.
so it's a transit. So this is a transition. In a transition, you're always uncomfortable and it always feels abnormal. So stop telling yourself you're confused and stop telling yourself something's not right. Tell yourself the more accurate truth, something's changing. And it's very simple, and you know what it is. What's changing is you're starting to see more clear than ever that you have nothing to prove. That that achievements for their own sake, fine. But if they're for the sake of proving that you are okay enough, they'll never prove it. Because that's not how it works. You're okay enough because you are. You can't prove being by doing. I mean, you can't validate being by doing. Doing is doing and being is being. Being doesn't need validation. Either you be or you don't be. To be or not to be. That is Kat's question. And all you're saying to yourself is the truth, that my achievements are not the measure of me. You haven't been able to say that before. You're on the cusp of being able to say that. So yeah, you'll feel weird for a while. You'll feel like not yourself. When you're really transforming, when something is really changing for the better, you always feel like abnormal. So it's just to be enjoyed and tolerated, and everything is absolutely... There's nothing here that's confused. If anything, you're the least confused you've ever been. Because this is so fundamental for you, and it's so simple that, yes, you were confused about it, but now you're actually not confused about it. That's the clearest statement I've ever heard you make about it. So you're almost at the end. You're almost at the end of this being a problem, this being something that co-opts your whole attention. This is gonna give you a lot of ability to focus on things you've never even noticed before. This is going to be a very big energy. When this is actually done, and it's pretty much, a matter of a tiny bit of time, it'll be done, because the way you're describing it, you are at the end. There's no way it can't happen. It'll finish, and that's like a release of energy. You'll find that you have energy in ways you never had before. It may have a profound effect on your ongoing, they keep changing, but ongoing health problems and feeling like you don't have energy for life. That may change more dramatically than you think is possible just from this. But I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it could. Time will tell. But I am saying you're at the end, so we're not talking about years, or even probably months. We're not talking about 6 months. You've got weeks, a month or two left of this clarifying all the way, and you like getting it all the way. And this lifelong issue is resolved. This is the closest you've ever been to it being resolved. Now, and if you'll notice, you're not doing it. It's resolving. So there's...
I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. That's the part that floored me.
Yeah, I'm pointing that out because that helps you not worry about it. If it's taking care of itself, what's there to worry about?
It's taking care of itself, so what's there to worry about? Yes.
But mainly, don't tell yourself you're confused, and don't tell yourself something's wrong. Tell yourself, if you have to tell yourself something, tell yourself something's right, so it feels not like I'm used to feeling. That doesn't mean something's wrong, and that doesn't mean you're confused. If it meant that, then we should all be so confused. A very basic issue is finally resolving, so that's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Time's a wasting. Don't let it be unused.
Get a box. Let me get a box. Can I help you?
Thomas, you already has a question?
Mm-hmm.
Question, go to question.
Don't have a question.
Speak up.
Don't have a question, but just a report how everything seems surreal and dreamlike. I was sitting in my new backyard and it seemed unreal. How did I even get here? I've been working on it for 5 years and it just seemed like all of a sudden something, I don't even know, like I know a lot went into it, but just sitting there felt like not even real.
Is that an enjoyable feeling or an unpleasant
It was
feeling?
very enjoyable.
Oh, well then enjoy it.
Yeah, it was.
If it's unpleasant, that's a different thing. But if it's
Yeah.
enjoyable, then enjoy it as long as you can, because it will definitely not last.
Yeah, it was.
See, if you had said it's unpleasant, I'd have said, then just put up with it, because it won't last very long.
Also, that in this, I don't know how long I've been a disciple, maybe 6 months or so. So I feel I'm at
Winter retreat,
yes,
right? So yeah, 7 months.
7 months. I feel like I'm a different person.
Yeah, well, that's discipleship. What would be the point of discipleship if nothing changed? Discipleship is a divine organic process that's very real, the same way as your heart and blood vessels pumping blood all through your body. That's a real process. Discipleship is even realer than that. Discipleship profoundly changes you ongoing and as a natural process, not something you do. So if you weren't able to say that, then that would mean you're not opening yourself enough yet to true discipleship, because it's an organic, real process.
Yeah, a lot has changed. I notice how relaxed I am being in a new place with new people. It just doesn't feel. I used to be a little more reserved, I guess. You know, I feel more relaxed around people, new places. I don't worry, you know, the way I used to. In fact, that part is it's like you're not almost like the fear is so much less that I don't notice new things, you know, and then I check in. It's like it's not normal to not have that for me.
Well, it's not what you're used to.
Yeah. accept.
Worry actually is not normal. Even though everybody worries until the day comes when worry kind of dissolves for you. It's not part of the divine plan, never was, that human beings worry. The process of worrying is something we invented. It's not natural. It's not necessary, and it's not normal. Anything that's not natural is not normal. If you define normal as a lot of people do it, or the majority do it, that still doesn't mean it's natural. And I define normal as what's natural, how it's meant to be. And by no standard is worry natural. Human beings actually were never meant to worry. You may have been meant to run for your life if a dinosaur is coming after you, but once you've escaped and you know you're not going to be eaten, you weren't meant to worry after that. You worry while you're running. That's a good word. That's survival. That helps you survive. But beyond that, to worry while you're sitting in your living room and dinosaurs are extinct, that's not how it's meant to be. Because that's exactly what we do. We sit there in comfort worrying about scenarios that are imaginary of all what could happen or what we believe might happen tomorrow. That's a worst case scenario. When I go into work tomorrow and I have this meeting and I had to prepare this report and this could happen and this and that. We play out the worst case scenarios in our head, and 99.9% of the time that's not what happens, and the worry was for nothing. So don't think that that's a natural human process to worry, since we all have done it. We all start as warriors. The spiritual path includes at some point that ends. Doesn't in any way mean it's normal or natural. Worry is artificial and a human creation that was never meant to be.
That's new for me.
Yeah. It's new for everybody when worry stops, whether that's temporary or permanent. That always feels like, whoa, what's going on? Because we're so used to worrying in a literal, ongoing, moment-to-moment way. We worry about the littlest nothing and the biggest everything, and that's what we're used to. But worry is a habit, and anything that's a habit can either be stopped or changed into something else. If it weren't a habit, it'd be different. But if you can, whatever else it is and whatever else you can call it, if it can rightly be called a habit, that proves it can change.
So grateful to you.
Eating is not a habit. For example, eating is not a habit. There are people who claim they've trained themselves to not need to eat. And I have no reason to doubt. You know, some woman in India who's a high yogini says, I'm a breatharian. I live on breath. I haven't eaten or drunk anything in 46 years. And there are people who've lived in her house for a year at a time and have confirmed that whole year I saw her if she had eaten or drunk anything, I would have seen it. So I have no reason to doubt that that can exist. But it isn't normal. The rest of us shouldn't shoot for it. It may work temporarily as a minor weight loss method, but beyond that, you'll fail. It will erode your health and it'll drive you crazy. And it's only for, those few in all of the history of this whole earth that might be right for, who could ever pull it off. Maybe that's 5 people, I would guess. If it's anything more than this one Indian lady, I'm going to guess it's 5 people. It's just a guess, I have no idea. Maybe it's 1 million people, I don't know. But that would surprise me. In other words, it's so few that it's as if no one could. If there's 7 billion people on the planet, and there's been in all of history 100 billion people on the planet, and only 5 have done that, it's the same as 0. Get my point? Because people hear this, and I've I've actually had people tell me that's their goal, is they're training to become a breatharian. And I really do my best if they're at all open to a dialogue, that I try to talk them out of it, because their chances of achieving it are essentially zero, unless I'm talking to a little old lady from India who clearly hasn't eaten in a while. Maybe her I wouldn't try to talk out of it, but everybody else I have tried. I don't think I've ever succeeded, but I don't think they've ever succeeded in going very long without any food or water of any kind. So the problem kind of takes care of itself when people get into that idea. But all I'm saying is there are very many things, natural things in life, that are not habits in any way, shape, or form. Even though we have to eat every day as a habit, it's actually not a habit, it's an organic necessity. So that's how we get you're actually eating prana. I mean, it's really not food. We don't think of it this way, but life force is life force. Food is one way you get it. Other people and interacting and relating is one way you get it. Physical movement is one way you get it. The sun is one way. There are literally thousands of ways every day that you receive life force, and it's natural in you. It's circulating in you, or else you wouldn't be alive. But it needs constant replenishment, constant flow, and that's all taken care of. There are literally 100 processes going on all the time, every single moment, every single day, that are giving you life force. So when people think that food is just food, it's fuel. People call it fuel. It's way more than that. It's actual life. It's the life force that allows you to live. So there's no way in other words, it's something way beyond a habit. Many things are like that, and many things are habits, and there really isn't a lot in between. Some things are neither habits nor that, nor regular processes, but it's not much. Mostly it's one or the other. And once you start to realize how much is a habit, which means if you're determined enough, it can be changed. You may have to move heaven and earth, but it can be changed. And then when you realize how many things literally are whatever else they are, and they may be much more than habits, but they're still habits, they qualify as a habit. Once you realize how much, it's more than 60-70% of everything in life is a habit, which means 60 or 70% is subject to being changed at will if you're serious about it. And that is a true realization that one gets when you're ready to see that. When that becomes clear to you, you realize how much is possible just at your fingertips without moving heaven and earth, So who knows whether this is the beginning of worry permanently being gone, the tendency to worry, the ability to worry, or whether this is just a lapse and it'll come back. I wouldn't really worry about it, but even just to have a short worry-free period is almost a miracle for most of us. So great. But the point is, that's the real response to what you're saying, is what you're saying is the actuality of what discipleship is. Everything starts to change, everything. Because where we start usually is from a position where nothing is really the way it's meant to be. Somehow the worldly life manages to turn everything upside down, and spiritual life is about turning it right side up. So of course it changes. How do you turn what's upside down right side up? More and more things go from upside down to right side up, and how can that not feel like big changes are happening? Even right in the beginning, the first year of discipleship. As a 36 6-year disciple, I can testify to you that year in, year out, day in, day out, but certainly year in, year out, that continues and gets even more dramatic. It's not like the first and second year and then the rest of the time you coast. It's the nature of discipleship is it continues to transform your life year in, year out. But some of the biggest changes that you experience actually happened immediately, the moment you became a disciple, but they get experienced later. They kind of roll out to your understanding or your awareness even 10 years later. And then, but at some point it may happen that you realize it actually happened the first day. It actually took place, but I'm only seeing the reality of that much later. So, and that continues year in year. I mean, 36 years later, I can say that that's still the case, that I'm noticing things that I think are a product of the last few years, and I suddenly realize, no, actually, that goes back to the first moment. So that's the wonder of discipleship. It's not, I don't like to use the word because it makes it sound like hocus pocus, but it is actually magical. It's a mystical process. It's a metaphysical process. It's a divine process. And there is a magic to it. But the magic simply means that it promises nothing and keeps delivering. And it does it in a way that we can't understand. And it does it for real and organically. And every disciple feels it, knows it, experiences whatever aspects they experience. But there's no denying that it isn't you, and that discipleship has a life of its own, that it knows what it's doing. Every genuine disciple knows that as fact, the same way you know as when you look, the same way you don't have to look at your hand to know you have 5 fingers. So that's the magic of discipleship. And you also, the magic, of course, is also that you know that it's a divine process that's God-given, that discipleship chooses you, you don't choose it, even though you choose it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to give the meaning of why it's right to call it magical, but I don't want to do that too much because then people start to think of it magical. Often the mind takes as I don't have to do anything, it happens by magic. It's like it just happens because it happens, and I don't have a part in it. I'd rather you assume you have a big part in it than you think that there's nothing for you to do, because then you won't do your part. Discipleship, you actually don't have a part in it, but discipleship requires you to do what you need to do. So, and it requires it in a way the world never will. So that's a benefit, but it also means that the discipleship life is more challenging than the conventional life, than a life where discipleship is not involved or a possibility. That is never going to be as challenging as discipleship, because discipleship is a requirement to do better and move higher. And it's that you feel the pressure of that. It's a demand, and you feel the pressure of that demand. But it's also a glorious demand. It's saying you can be much more. You can give much more, you can be much more, you can love much more. And you can actually remove or overcome or transcend what you call obstacles or barriers. Because we're not really sure. When we sense there's a barrier, the mental process is we're not confident that we can remove it. But discipleship, there's no barrier discipleship can't handle. discipleship helped you choose a shade of, what's that called?
Nail polish?
Nail polish. A shade of nail polish even I like. And generally I don't like nail polish. There's a certain shade of blue and then that orange that I really like. Don't think I can't show up with it either. Because whenever Naja does my nails 1 out of 3 times, she'll ask me, "You want some color?" One day I'm going to give her a heart attack and say yes.
Swamiji, we have Angelo, ICODA Brussels, and Quinn online.
Okay. You're the moderator, so you pick who goes first. We've got 21 minutes left.
Angelo, go ahead.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Speak.
Okay. So I wanted to ask something because now my life is gonna change soon because I'm selling the family house where I'm now. And I'm living alone in my the house which is the house where I grew up, and mostly I don't know where to go, what to do because I'm also unemployed now. And lots of opportunities, so lots of, I can do and go wherever I want, or stay here. So I'm overwhelmed and a bit confused and worried also. Not much, but a little bit of everything. So that creates something, and so I don't know, you can suggest something or give any hints?
Sure. What's likely? What are you likely to do? Where are you likely to go? If you had to guess, I'm not saying it has to be correct, but if you had to guess, what's your guess of where you'll end up and what you'll end up, where you'll end up and what you'll be doing?
Where I'm allowed to go, you mean?
No. What's your guess as to what will actually happen? Where will you actually go and what will you actually end up doing? What's your guess? You're saying you haven't made a decision, so I'm asking you what's your guess as to what the decision will be.
Okay. To be honest, I don't know.
That's why I'm asking you to guess, because you don't have to know. Guess means I don't know, but here's what pops into my head when I think about it. I'm not asking you to decide or to know. I'm asking you to guess.
To guess. At the same time, it's difficult to guess because I picture a few things at the same time. So I cannot pick one, I like to see 3 flowers at the same time. Which one you pick up? You don't know. Really, to be honest. So I don't know what to guess. I don't know.
You're in Brussels?
No, I'm from Italy.
You're in Italy? Where?
You cannot see me now?
Oh, I can see your face, but it's... No, now I can see the moving.
Yeah, in the meanwhile, I took a bike and I'm riding.
Oh, okay. Just to see where you end up. Yeah. So, what's the
I can show you the front camera.
what's the name of your town?
Okay.
Now, if you look out the left side of your bus, what town are you in?
The city center. It's a very beautiful city center, actually, while we're talking.
And what city is it?
Modena.
Modena?
Ravenna. R-A-V-E-N-N-A.
Oh, Ravenna. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And soon I will. I hope this is not the answer. To stay in the same town. this is my hometown, you know?
Yes.
And I'm wishing to leave.
So did
At
one?
the same time, I might stay here. It's not a guess, but since I know it a bit myself, you know, not lazy, but I'm not very good in, you know, like material things in a kind of way.
Do you have a
So
Do you have a profession?
I used to have, but it's already a few years I'm not working.
Well,
This is at home.
what was it?
And so I was used to work like teaching computer English, and the main job I've done was with AutoCAD in engineering studio. Even though I'm not an engineer, but I was working for engineers, you know, for people. They need somebody to draw at the computer with AutoCAD all
Okay.
day long.
Okay. And your parent recently died?
No, my father died when I was 8 or 9 years old. With my brother too. So my brother and my father passed away when I was 8 or 9.
And your
I
mother?
left with my mom. No, I left with my mom. Well, in a kind of way, my mother died too because she never been the same. She always never been much present, but after that, it was really like
Okay.
gone.
But she's still physically alive, but you don't have much of a relationship.
Yes.
Is that what
yes,
you're saying?
I can say she, yeah. I don't know if it's older than me or she never had much relationship with anybody.
Okay.
In a sense, but especially with us in the family, because I don't know why.
Well, in some ways, she's not all there. Okay.
Yeah. So that I grew up a little bit in a strange way, and
Would you like to leave? Would you like to leave Italy?
yes, it's more than I would like. Is something I feel. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like something I want in my mind.
Yeah. So you asked me for
It's
a suggestion. You asked me for my suggestions. My suggestion is you leave Italy.
all right.
But not by bicycle. But not by bicycle. So it'll be very difficult. It will be everything you've described shows that it will be very difficult for you to make an actual decision, a firm decision to actually leave that house, that city, and to leave Italy. But you asked me, can you give me a suggestion? This is my suggestion. Make that decision, and the decision should be to leave Italy. But understand that will be the most difficult decision you've ever made, not because it's difficult, but because everything in you will want to not make it. So you'll have to overcome that and make it anyway. And remember, you can always go back. It's not like it's a final thing and that once you decide, if it doesn't, wherever you decide to go, if you don't like it, you can't go back to Ravenna or anywhere else. Like you say, you can go anywhere. But definitely leave Italy. It's like it's like you have the opportunity to be 18 right now. All possibilities are there and nothing is stopping you. And you have inside you a strong desire to branch out and see more and not be so in such a limited space as you keep living. You've lived your whole life in the same house. Something in you wants to break out, obviously. The best way to support that is actually do what your feeling says and leave Italy. I'm not going to make suggestions where to go. You can decide. But I am making a strong suggestion that it is the right choice and the right decision to leave Italy. And if you decide later it wasn't a good idea, you just go back. No problem. But leave Italy. That's a deep, important thing that not just your heart and your mind, but your soul wants you to do. Your soul wants you to become bigger, and you have to leave Italy to do that.
Yes. And can I say something?
Absolutely.
I
Must be important because you stopped the bike.
I can show you. I'm in San Francisco Square. It's my favorite square. San Francisco church is there, and there is a tomb of Dante Alighieri. If you've heard about it.
Did we go to Ravenna?
Dante Alighieri. My colleagues know him. He's a writer. He's a famous writer here.
Over here in LA, we've heard of him.
Oh, you know him?
Not personally, no.
No, okay. Anyway, so no, I worry.
The hotel we stayed at in Firenze was right by Alighieri Square, with the statue and the basilica, and very beautiful
Oh, okay, yeah.
area.
Yeah, we got
So I got to see him every day.
And in fact, those kind of people are angry, in fact, because we got the mausoleum, I don't like there, but he came here to die. He came here to die. So, and years ago I went abroad, and as I told you, I'm a little bit not much down to earth person. At least I was, and so I was roaming around. I was abroad, and I didn't make up any job or business. When I came back broke, and at least I had that house. And now I'm selling that house, so I'm a bit worried because I can't screw up.
Sure you can.
You know what I mean?
And before you were roaming, it was a vacation. It wasn't serious. So this is different. It's not the same situation.
Yeah.
Before you had the luxury because you were roaming. This is actually moving and starting a life somewhere else. If it doesn't work out and you want to go back to Italy, even back to Ravenna, no problem. You can do it. But you owe yourself to do what your heart is telling you to do and try life somewhere else and see what it shows you and what it gives you. And it will give you gifts, there's no question. It's an expansion. You're wanting to expand. Everything in you, heart, body, mind, and soul, is wanting to expand, and that's why you're thinking this. And you're correct. So yes, leave Italy, because it may be a very helpful thing to do for you to expand and be more, find more, a way to know who you really are. You don't have to be more down to earth than you are. It hasn't harmed you so far, so going somewhere else doesn't require that you become a different person. You go and you experience a different place, which has different things to show you and give you and teach you. But I wouldn't be worried. I'm not worried for you that you're not down to earth enough. That's not the issue. The issue is it's hard to go somewhere new when you've stayed in the same place your whole life and seen it as home. It's hard to say, I'm going to try to make a home in this new place. So it's hard. So what? I mean, many things are hard, but that doesn't mean it isn't worth doing. And how you've talked about it shows that you really have no choice. You're just not aware that your heart has already decided, your soul has already decided that you must try some other country because it will expand you, it will open you, it will show you new things, it will give you a new sky above you. And I don't think you have anything to lose. I understand why it would bring worry and fear, but have all the worry and fear, but don't let that stop you. If you can stop the worry and fear, great. But if you can't, do it anyway. So you wanted my suggestion? That's it. Get out of Italy. Make the decision. It will be very difficult. You'll try to procrastinate. Don't procrastinate. Even be impulsive about it. Be very not down to earth about it. Just pick a place that seems right, feels right, even if you've never been, and go. Take the money from selling everything you're selling, put it in your pocket, and go. Don't make it into a project. Don't take a long time, because that will just be an excuse to never go. It'll turn into an excuse to never go. Okay?
Well, now I'm forced. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm forced. If it helps, say Swami Premodaya forced me to do it.
No, I'm selling the house, so after I don't have any roof on
Yeah.
my head. That's why I closed.
Yeah, so it's the so it's the perfect time to leave.
Yeah, I have to make a decision in 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Yes. Well, you've basically already decided to leave. You just haven't decided where to go. But you haven't made a firm decision. Make a firm decision. I'm going to go to another country and see what life is like somewhere else, not as a visitor.
Right,
Good.
right. Yeah.
And it's not a sentence like you can't change it. If you don't like it, then you'll go somewhere else.
Well, yeah, I'll have enough money to try to 3 times. I guess. I hope.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Yeah, there are many great places all over the world. I don't think you'll have to do it 2 or 3 times. I think your intuition will take you to the place you're meant to be, for now at least, the very first time. I think whatever comes to you as this is where I'm going to try, I think it'll be the right decision. I really do. That doesn't mean I'm right, but I have a strong sense that you won't need to try somewhere else a second time. It's so strong. The whole thing is so strong.
I have a couple of places in mind, mainly.
I'll pick one and go there.
Okay. I don't tell you that.
And don't tell me, surprise me from there. Because then you'll feel like you've obligated yourself because you haven't chosen. You say a couple, so choose. The problem is the inertia of not wanting to choose. The energy says don't choose, think it through some more. Don't do that. Choose and go. Don't be in Italy 6 weeks from now. Be in the new place.
That's for sure.
We'll put a deadline on it. You must be in the new country 6 weeks from now. That's your maximum maximum. Deadlines are meant to be helpful.
Roger that. Sorry, no, I missed that. The voice went over. What did you say?
6 weeks.
The voice went away.
Yes. 6 weeks. Your deadline.
Yeah,
You must be in the new country a maximum of 6 weeks from now.
Within 6.
Yeah, not more than 6 weeks.
Okay, that's it. Okay.
That's your deadline.
So better I buy the ticket then.
6 weeks. That's the deadline.
Because it's cheaper to buy.
Yes. The sooner you decide, the better, and then the cheaper the ticket will be. That's right. Don't give yourself.
Yeah, I worry about money. Sorry about that.
Don't give yourself excuses to postpone.
The last year I was living on $60 per week. That was hard to believe. But
Yeah, so you're very resourceful. You're very resourceful, and you don't need much. All of that's an advantage for living elsewhere. Good.
yeah.
So
Okay, thank you.
stay in touch. Stay in touch. We're all very interested to hear the ongoing saga of where you're going to end up.
Okay. Of course I understand.
Okay. Moderator, who was the other person?
ICODA Brussels. Go ahead, ICODA Brussels.
Yes, hello. I have only one report. I feel very solid. And that's new to feel as solid as I feel. And I don't really have questions about it, or it's just it's a good thing. And it's new.
Unexpected, not just new, unexpected.
Yeah.
Because it surprises you, because it shows you that you were not feeling solid before, which wasn't really a thought you were having. You weren't sitting around saying, I don't feel solid enough. So, I mean, you knew there were some issues about, you know, procrastination and making decisions and standing up for yourself and whatever, you know, whatever all those minor issues are, but you weren't sitting around saying, I need to be more solid. This just is a new sense that you notice all of a sudden, right?
Yes.
And you're not questioning it, you're not looking for an explanation, and you're not looking for an understanding. You're just saying, it seems right, feels good, so good for me. Good. The irony is solid, feeling more solid always means you're more open. It always means you're more willing for more possibilities. It doesn't mean, like the word, you know, linguistically suggests to some, might suggest to some minds when we hear the word solid, more rigid, more one thing. Oddly enough, when a person feels more solid, they feel less rigid, they feel more open, they feel more flexible, not less. More solid means you're more willing to be more flexible and consider all options and consider possibilities that you may have never been willing to consider before. More solid always means more is possible, more is available than before, which we don't necessarily automatically look at it that way when we notice we feel more solid, but it always means that. It always means you're in a more open frame of mind, you're in a more willing state. It's definitely always better, and it never means you've gone in a wrong direction, but it actually means you're more spacious, therefore you feel more solid. You have more space inside than before. Will always make you, the way that gets experienced is either I feel more spaciousness inside, it can be experienced directly, but if that's not the experience, then it gets experienced as I feel more solid.
Yeah, that sounds absolutely correct. Yeah, open, spacious. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, thank you.
You had your hand up. Is it quick? Because we're out of time.
Quinn
So,
was ahead of me.
oh, Quinn was wanting to say something. Then Quinn gets the last word. Because we don't have time for two, but if Quinn will be quick, we'll squeeze one last one in.
Go ahead, Quinn.
Hi.
Hey.
I don't have a quickie, just so if you want a quickie, I just want to say hi then. How are you? I'm glad you're back in the United States.
You don't have a quickie? You can't say whatever you were going to say in an abbreviated form? Smart guy like you?
It's about the truth thing and be adjusting to truth. That's it. Just having a difficult time adjusting to truth, but it's not easy because 3 or 4 years ago something happened, and that lasted for 5 days. And when 99% of it went away on day 6, something remained, and I knew that I was living in a lie. So for 3 years after that, I was living in a giant lie, didn't realize it, and couldn't help it because of the programming. So it was definitely a difficult time for me. But now at least I can put it into words. And it does seem like I'm living in more truth, or recognizing the truth, and living in it a little bit more. That's it. That's my quickie. I probably will be back in LA in about a year, 2 years max.
Boy, I hope I'm not here.
Yeah, you know you miss me.
No, it's got nothing to do with you. It's just I'm here temporarily for specific reasons. It's not my, I'm not a resident of the U.S. I feel like I'm a visitor, and it never feels good to be a visitor too long. So, but I gotta get done what I gotta get done. So, however long it takes, it'll take. That's the way it is. So, can you imagine, and then we'll stop, it's just a yes or no question, can you imagine being a friend to yourself?
A little bit difficult to imagine, but I'm gonna try now that you mentioned it. I'm gonna.
Well, I wasn't suggesting you try it. It was a question. Now, if you want to try it, you're free to try it, of course. But I just wanted to see if the answer is yes or no, that you can imagine. The answer is, it's hard, but I can imagine a little bit. So I got my answer. So good. If the answer was no, then we have to look into that a little bit. But if the answer is, I could see that would be hard, but I could imagine it, then, and you want to take it on, by all means, be my guest. But I'm not.
Right.
I wasn't offering it as a suggestion.
Okay.
So, but if it seems smart or good and you want to, then I'm all for it. Okay. So, can we consider having a requirement that no matter what country you're in, for Satsang Saturday mornings, you must be on a bicycle? That's kind of fun. He's getting a view of Ravenna. Now, give me a slice of pizza, would you? At my age, I can ride a bicycle and I can do satsang, but not at the same time. I can't imagine being on a bicycle and talking to someone and being, on a FaceTime at the same time. It's like, it's too much going on. You'll see. So it's a good example that satsang has no requirements. Gathering together for a deeper spiritual consideration has no special conditions required. You don't have to be in a temple. You don't have to be on a mountaintop. You don't have to be in a deep state of meditation. You can be on a bicycle in the center of town in Italy. You can be at the beach. You can be sitting here in a spiritual center. You can be anywhere in the world doing anything. And it's the right conditions for all and any spiritual endeavor, activity, thought, feeling, discussion. You can meditate anywhere, you can pray anywhere, you can relate anytime to anyone. There is no excuse possible that the conditions weren't right. Many times people get very stuck on this, that the conditions aren't right. I'm too busy, my job stresses me out so much, I can't meditate. When I get home, I'm just collapsed. People have all kinds of reasons that seem very valid. Their mind has convinced them are valid. This is a good example. This was a You know what? They had 30, 35 people in this satsang, a number of countries, and all in different conditions, and nothing is a barrier to truth, God, reality, nothing. The barrier is never anything other than our own willingness. That's the only possible actual barrier. And even that is not such a barrier. If you're not willing, then you work on being willing to be willing. And if you can't achieve willing to be willing, you work on being open to being willing to be willing. It just really isn't any question of outside conditions ever, but the inner conditions have to be looked at. The outer conditions are never, if there's any problem, the inner conditions have to be looked at, but the outer conditions can never be said to be the problem, because no outer conditions can prevent you from being who you are, and no outer conditions can prevent you from knowing God. And no outer conditions, even the worst kind, can prevent you from moving closer to truth. So we can never legitimately say we failed as long as we're still trying, and we can never legitimately say the conditions aren't right or aren't conducive enough, so I can't. At all times, anywhere, under all conditions, your spiritual nature, your spiritual awareness, the fact that you know the reality of the spiritual, is a tremendous, tremendous advantage, tremendous strength. Makes you in a position of possibility that other people, conventionally minded people, don't have. They're not standing on the rock you're standing on, they're standing on sand. And this advantage is incalculably good, better than any worldly wealth, better than any power or prestige. The fact that you know the actuality of the spiritual and that you are actively seeking to make it more so. So it's even more important to remember that special conditions aren't needed. The special condition is you. And that's why it's so enjoyable, why it's so much my joy to be with you, because that isn't the case with people in the conventional world. They're still radiant and they have what they have, but it's not the same as being with you. So thank you for letting me be with you.